Awesome. So I'll have Ashley introduce herself first.
Hi guys, I'm Ashley Thornton. I am a member of Wilson Leung Real Estate team. I'm excited to share a little bit of my real estate investing background with you guys. It's actually one of the reasons I got started, not only getting my real estate license here in California, but also joining the team and partnering with Jenny Locke. We met many, many years ago while getting started in real estate investing. So I'm excited to share my journey with you guys and answer any questions you might have. So yeah.
Great. Then I'm Jenny Locke. I am on Wilson's team as a real estate agent. I came from Oracle working at a full-time 9-to-5 tech sales job and transitioned about 4 years ago and joined the team and bought my first property a year before that at the age of 23 and started house hacking and renting out rooms. If you're not aware of what that term means, it's when you buy a property and rent out rooms and have other people pay your mortgage for you. And then I bought my second property in Alabama at the age, I think it was 24, and before I became a real estate agent. And I was like, okay, how do I buy more properties? And I decided to just go full-fledged into real estate. Luckily, Wilson was able to teach me a lot of his ways and was awarded the 30 Under 30 National Association of Realtors last year as well too. And then I work very closely with Calvin, who's my partner, and we have purchased a lot of investment properties locally here and then out of state. And one of the biggest goals that we've been able to accomplish is buying our dream house together, that we're still house hacking, but it's something that we wouldn't have been able to do unless we started like a few years ago. So it was only a 4-year journey so far, and I'll have Calvin introduce himself.
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? It's Calvin Chin. Appreciate everyone joining today. I know it's basically going to be the last day ever on Earth, the sky like this, but so coming and enjoying your last few hours with us. I'm not on Wilson's team. I'm not an agent. I think I can provide like a different viewpoint on everything because I am still in the 9-to-5 grind. But still do real estate investing as well. Together, Jenny and I have about 22 units, but we have another 16 units under contract. So our first commercial deal as well. So, love to be able to share, everything from the very first deal to partnerships to eventually scaling into more commercial side of stuff. So, excited to take questions and share experiences.
Today, we're going to discuss how we've been able to leverage real estate as a vehicle to reach financial freedom. We're still on our journey, so we're not fully quite there yet. We'll dive into the different tactics that you can leverage through real estate, from house hacking. I started from house hacking, and we're still house hacking right now. Ashley is a killer at Airbnb and was a super host. I know Henry, our friend here, he's on the webinar as well. He has his Airbnbs as well too. So love to make this interactive to see if anyone else, and Jeff, I think, has experience with Airbnb too. And then all of us have bought some out-of-state investment properties as well too. So in multiple states, we'll dive into Indianapolis with Ashley, Texas, Kansas City, and also Huntsville, Alabama is where I bought first, sold, and going back to with Calvin. And then we'll analyze some of the deals. And then we're also going to look at some local in-state investment deals. I think Zubin, you emailed me, and we'll be diving into some of the starting points to be able to start leveraging here locally. And then we'll dive into some of the out-of-state potentially together as well if we have enough time. Have Ashley share.
Oh, so one of the reasons that we wanted to get together, and the reason that we have been so successful and where we've been so far, is because of our big why. These are our reasons why we get up every day and we grind, and we are working every day to build that wealth through real estate is so that we can have multiple pups, we can spend time with family. And one of the photos there is me giving my best friend the little wine bottle there. So just this year I was able to help my best friend purchase her first condo in San Francisco. So that was a big thing for me on why I want to do this, is so I can help others and help them build wealth through real estate as well. So we want that for everyone here as well.
Then for me, my big why is helping support my parents. They were immigrants. They came here in the 80s, still working pretty long hours. I remember growing up, they would work 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Now that it's shortened to about 12-hour days, 6 days a week. So they've been taking Sundays off. So it's a good stepping stone. But one of the big things I've realized is that the older that we get, our parents are not getting any younger. So I want to be able to show them the world. Calvin and I actually were able to take them to Barcelona and Madrid last year for a trip on Thanksgiving. Hopefully we'll be able to travel again soon, but that's one of our big goals, is to be able to show them the world, because they've been spending their whole life working and not really been able to see what else is out there. So that's our mission here. And then Calvin?
Yeah, my big why is just keep Jenny happy. And that's all it is. No, but yeah, I think we're all on this earth for a fixed amount of time. So where are we going to spend our time the most? Hopefully, it's not just working and being in front of your laptop or scrolling through Instagram most of that time. So where can we get our time back? And I think real estate's a vehicle for us to be able to get some of that time back, so that we can do what we want, with who we want, when we want, and do whatever we want. So that's my big why.
Then, so that's how we get started. I think that was some of the questions mentioned on setting goals and what our goal is for this year and for 2021. And I believe Calvin and I have set a goal to get close to $10,000 of passive income per month. And I believe we're close to that with this property we're under contract with the 16 unit in Alabama. But the next thing is also calculating what your monthly expenses are. So basically, if you have your car payments, your home payments, and food, and all your travel expenses, which I know right now is not too much, but being able to break down all that cost and to see what that number is to replace your income of what your monthly expenses is the first step. And then how can we exceed that afterwards? And then knowing what you want, what you need for your lifestyle. So for all the fun stuff in life, and also prepping for future for kids and their education plans. So figuring out what that number is on a monthly perspective and making it simpler. So us was making it $10,000 per month. The last one.
Yeah, I think I think just do it, right? Like, I think even for us, in the very first deal that we ever did, it was super scary. But if you just kind of just jump in, do it, like the best way to learn is actually by doing it. Now, obviously, doing the due diligence and as much as you can to get educated before you do it. But at the same time, like, the best learning experience is going to be the first one. And even if it's not the best deal of all time, you've learned that much that you can take to the next deal, and next deal, and next deal. That you'll be able to use in your real estate careers.
Mm-hmm. And there's an old Chinese saying where the best time to buy was 20 years ago or 100 years ago to plant the tree, and plant this investment. And then the next best time to buy and invest is now. So right now it's a great time. It's never too late to start, but it's better to start early. And we're grateful to have started at an early age, but we have seen a lot of other investors and friends start even in their retirement and be able to help transition and set a different path for their life by starting a little, just getting going and just doing it. So Building wealth in real estate. So why it's a great option, why we love it. I know there's a lot of other investments out there and other vehicles. For why we love it is because it has all of these facets where you get tax advantages, you get a hard asset. You can actually see what you're investing in, and you'll be able to leverage and pull money out of it, be able to build that equity and get a home equity line of credit, all these other facets to real estate where you can't get from stocks and bonds and your regular cash savings, which is only getting like 0.01% interest rate. And then you'll have a high cash yield as well too. There are obviously some risk involved as well too, such as managing tenants and some headaches from here and there, which we'll dive into, but overall, it's more of a long-term investment. It's not a get-rich quick scheme, but something similar to a tree. It's plant the seed, water it over time, and it'll grow into an enormous tree that will last for generations that you can pass on to your family and such. And Ashley, any thoughts on why you invest in real estate?
It's the same. It's long-term for me. It's my retirement. It's as much as we're able to leverage some of it now, I want to be able to make that choice for myself when I no longer have to work. I got into real estate. I said I was retiring now because I wanted to get into real estate. And then one of these days I only want to have to work if I want to. So that's why I've decided to, put all of my energy into this real estate and building wealth that way.
And Calvin?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big thing that I took away from that last slide was leverage, right? It's the only asset you can leverage. You can buy a 100K property for 20K of cash. You can but for stocks, you buy 100K of stocks, you gotta put 100K down, right? And you can level up, right? You go from single family to a duplex to quad, 20 units to 30 units to a whole RV park, right? So there's so many cool different things that you can do with real estate, and so many different niches that you can get yourself into. So it's an amazing world. And I've seen the transformation it's made in so many people's lives, whether they're agents or they're investors or they're even tenants, right? So it's a rewarding field for sure.
And then the first step where we started off is a lot of our costs and expenditures was from paying from a monthly rent. Living in San Francisco Bay Area, and I know that some people are all over the country right now. So Jason over in Oregon, I know it's a little more affordable there, but some friends I see from like Boston and New York, they're not cheap places to live in. So seeing that we were paying a certain amount for rent, so let's say it was $2,500 a month in rent, so that's $30,000 a year, and that's $150,000 over the course of 5 years. That's a big hefty amount of money that you're paying for someone else's mortgage. So over 20 years, if you keep renting for the rest of your life, and your mortgage is also, or your rent will likely go up too. So it won't be stagnant at 2,500 versus like a 30-year fixed mortgage, which will be pretty much flat. You're investing 600,000 to someone else's wealth. So when I thought about that, and I was at the age of, I was 21, 22. I was working hard at Oracle. I was like, I want to buy a house by the age of 28. Then I learned and just educated, read books. Some books we recommend is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. So just hearing these books and seeing other people do it, I was like, okay, I'm going to just dive into it. And I wouldn't have imagined being able to buy a property at the age of 23, but being able to do that and rent out rooms and offset my rental costs monthly and be able to build equity over time has been very life-changing.
Yeah.
The next slide. So some of the different strategies that we will discuss today is first, if you are renting, I know Ashley has done a lot of Airbnbs, so we'll dive into some of the Airbnb options as well too. So either like when I started when I was renting, I became the master tenant, and I eventually like increased the rent for the other rooms in the house because I was managing with the landlord, and then I lowered my rent. So that was the first step. And then the next step was buying a house in the Bay Area. That's actually a photo of my actual house, my first home, that is now currently a rental property, and renting out those rooms. And I was house hacking, renting out the other 3 rooms, and it paid for all of the mortgage. And then the next one is a photo of me and Calvin, and we own basically all those properties in the back. So we have 12 units in Kansas City. There are 3 fourplexes. So we've been able to leverage that to build some passive income, to build growth over time, increase our overall income as a whole, to be able to leverage and buy more properties. And these are some of the tools that we'll dive into that we recommend using, looking at the city taxes. So some of the questions that Chris had was, what are the expenses involved? So understanding what the tax rates are and what surprises there might be. And if there's, like San Francisco, they have something called Mellows Roost tax, where you have a higher tax percentage per year on your tax basis. So really understanding and talking to a local real estate agent is important to know what all the final fees are, understanding what those fee breakdowns are from the title insurance company, or if you're in a company or a state that works with lawyers, knowing those fees. There's other fees involved, such as if you want to protect yourself. Jay, I know you mentioned you were going to look at partnering with someone. So partnering with someone who is outside of family could be a bit tricky, but it is important that you set up a LLC or a certain partnership agreement in case anything happens. And there are costs for setting up that. So those are other things to account for. And then any other fees that people are thinking of that might miss?
I mean, I think you covered it. Taxes for sure, big one. Insurance, big one. Just making sure you budget stuff out for maintenance, capital expenditures like ACs going out or roofs. I know most of San Francisco and Peninsula, there's not AC units, but you know, in other places in the world there are, and those go out a lot. So just making sure that you budget that into any kind of model that you have.
And then property management fees as well too are about between 6 to 10%, depending on which area and how much they're managing for you. And Ashley, any costs around like Airbnb that you want to acknowledge?
Not too much, because you are charging cleaning fees and those types of things. So you typically calculate it into your price per night and things like that. And then on top add the fees. Some areas do have specialty taxes, depending on if you do Airbnb in, say, San Francisco, there's additional taxes. And so to consider that when thinking you're purchasing something for, say, Airbnb, you may want to take that into consideration about the areas that you are investing in. It's just additional types of things based on those areas. So as Jenny mentioned, every area is going to have different property taxes and things like that. You're going to want to research and make sure that you understand the areas that you're investing in. And then I think the online tools that we've used that I'm sure Jenny and Calvin will go into, Roofstock is a big one that I typically recommend when people ask me, where do I go to invest? Roofstock's already doing the homework for you. If you go there, they are a platform where they essentially are selling investment properties. They are the middleman. They do take, you know, a little bit off of the top. That's how they make their money, but they've already broke down the areas that they see the high rentability. There are rental markets in these areas. So that's the first place I'd recommend going and seeing where people are investing and where it has the high rentability. Roofstock's kind of already done the homework for us, which is nice. And then to figure out rents, how much you should be charging and things like that, websites like Renometer, Zillow and Redfin are great for that purpose as well.
And I would also say another online tool to use as you do due diligence to understand, hey, is this a good area or not, is just like neighborhood scout and even look at crime maps as well, just to make sure, hey, you know, like in my area, there's only, you know, it's not a war zone, right? And that schools are good, and that, hey, it's a place that people want to rent, not have to rent, but they want to rent there. So that's gonna help your demand and your net operating income in the future as well.
Yeah. And then to answer like Jeff's initial question is, how do we initially do the research of looking at which areas? So we went through Roofstop, we went through Real Wealth Network, and saw and talked to different investment counselors out there to see what areas are growing and also have that yield. So there's a lot of areas of growth, such as like Colorado and Denver and San Francisco Bay Area is great growth, but I think what we really targeted was a mixture of diversity of what we wanted in our portfolio. So the first thing is, like, if you don't own a property and you plan on staying where you're living right now, that would be the first step, is potentially buying a property where you are not paying for someone else's mortgage anymore. But if it makes more sense to rent and keep renting where you live and then buying somewhere else, then we'll look at areas that have high cash flow and growth. So where you're able to look for properties where you can rent out and put 20% down and exceed your like the rental income will exceed your monthly expenses is the main thing. So it's not a exact rule, but it's just like a quick search is like 1% is a 1% rule. So let's say if you're finding a property at $150,000 and you want it to rent out for $1,500 a month roughly. And I know some of the questions, Chris, you mentioned, what is the percent buffer you would like to use to estimate maintenance and rainy day expenses? So we typically put about at least like 6 months of the monthly expenses for that unit. Like that is a requirement for most banks to have that in reserves as well too, to have that saved up. But we will estimate about like 5 to 10% in maintenance costs. And it depends on the type of home that you're getting to. There are some homes that are turnkey, new construction, which will probably not have many issues, but we've also bought buildings that are older than our great grandparents and they're like 100 and something years old in Kansas City. So those are homes that we would allocate a bit more funds to. And it's dependent on if you're buying a fixer-upper or a new construction or a condo if you don't have to do anything about the outside too. And Ashley, I think you had a quick question.
Oh, for me in the chat? Oh, for Airbnb, do you estimate tool for Airbnb startup costs when you purchase a new property? Jason, good question. So for the estimation tool for Airbnb, you are going to need, I can share actually a really good article that I found. I typically, from what I've seen, is to calculate about 5,000 to 8,000 if it's a completely empty property to get all the things, not just like furniture, but yes, as you mentioned, like kitchen, linens, towels, and things like that. So if you want to share your email, I'd be happy to send you that article that has a lot of information on how to set up an Airbnb as far as those financials. I have been fortunate that the 2 ways that I have done Airbnb is they were already set up. One is the additional room in my house. It's my version of house hacking. I have Airbnb in my additional guest room and guest bath. And then one of the properties I purchased, I was letting my tenant do Airbnb. And so he managed everything. So that's one way for that. And then how much should you have on reserves for months of vacancy? I think similar, if you're just going into it, I would usually recommend at least 3 months reserves for vacancies. I don't know if you guys have done differently. I've been also very lucky that mine I keep buying them with tenants in place.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. I think it really depends on your risk tolerance. I would say 3 to 6 months. Some will even have a year of reserves just in case, but I like the 6 months number just because, you know, like you can always figure something out in 6 months if there's that long of a vacancy there. So
Mhm.
I think that's a good tool. Yeah.
This is a good segue into how we define our criteria. So I'll have Calvin dive into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think before you even go to look at a property, when you reach out to any real estate agent out there or broker or whoever you're talking to, they're always going to ask you, like, what are you looking for? And if you're like, hey, you know, I want a really good property, that's a great investment, that's not really narrowing it down for anyone, right? That can be anything. So when you're going into this, like, you want to be able to define exactly what you want, right? So, and it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Is it cash flow? Is it appreciation? Is it some kind of combination of both? And if that's the case, then you gotta let them know, hey, you know, I'm looking for something that's going to yield me a 10% cash on cash return. If it's a cap rate, if it's commercial property, you know, like a 6 cap, but with room to grow. Maybe you're looking at properties that you're trying to value add into, right? Where maybe the rents are not very high because, you know, the owner was an older owner that really hasn't paid attention to the property or rents in the area for the last 10 years. And there's opportunity for you to go in, and maybe it's not at the cash on cash you want right now, but it can be if you just operationally get the right property manager involved. So just being able to just define that correctly, you know, knowing where you want to be. And again, you can use your real estate agent to get advice on, hey, you know, where are some good areas? Where are B neighborhoods in this area, in this city? Are you okay with doing a little bit of work on the property? If it's cosmetic, if it's just floors and paint and cabinets and stuff like that, or hey, you know what? I actually want a property where I, you know, take to the studs and rehab it, right? So just be specific to what you want, and that way you're not going to be wasting time on evaluating deals that you have no intention of working on because they're just out of your scope and not even what you want anyway. So.
And I think the first one is potentially getting something that might not be a full rehab job. And it's a little scary. So the first property I bought out of state was a turnkey property that was fully remodeled and move-in ready. And there was already a tenant lined up for it. Ashley's bought properties with tenants ready in place, so you don't have to worry about that vacancy. And as we've bought more and more properties over time, where our risk tolerance has gotten higher, we've built up more reserves to be able to deal with those. And Calvin's done a great job at managing contractors and talking to people, building the team. And the first step is doing some of the research and really focusing on an area, because it is a bit tough to get an agent out there to work with an out-of-state investor, especially if it's not a immediate need, not a, what they would probably say, a more low-hanging fruit of someone who's like urgently looking to move and buy a property. So we have to really be on their side and not waste their time, and be very specific of, this is what I want, and in a specific parameter between $100,000 to $130,000 in a in this specific zip code or this different area. So do a lot of the research up front, because if you're all over the place and like looking at 50 different locations, then it's going to be hard for the real estate agent to be really able to work for you. But in the beginning, I would call a lot of different real estate agents and just to get an idea of what is out there and get educated. At least have a game plan in place, and also present them an option. Hey, I'm looking to purchase multiple properties with you where you can get multiple commissions, and I'm also a realtor here. I can refer you a lot of my friends, and they're looking to invest too. So you have to see what's in it for them to be able to truly work for you to find you those deals. And the next one.
And I think, Jenny, you guys kind of touched on this, but managing your renovations. I've done one, but our contractor did a lot of, you know, managing that. And the way we did that was set it up for the renovations that they were doing a lot of FaceTiming and sending us photos, and they didn't get paid until they checked off something that we asked them to do. And so I don't know how you've done yours, Calvin.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be something similar of making sure that when you even create a contract with your contractor, that you're not releasing funds until a certain criteria is done, right? So, hey, you know, phase one is, you know, I want you to demo the whole property, you know, and I want to see floors down. I'll release 30% of the project cost after I see that happening. That way, you're not getting lump sum to them, and they're just running away with your money. And personally, do I manage them? I mean, I think it's gonna be one, your contractor, but again, contractors can be a wild card in this whole thing. So I've had project managers in the past where they literally are just project managers to manage your contractor. And I've also had property managers actually do that too. And a great way you could actually do that is you can negotiate with your property manager. Hey, if you manage my renovation, I'll give you the business of the reoccurring side of my property management as well. And I've seen people, negotiate down the rates of their property management fee monthly if they give them the extra business as well. So there's that option as well versus just having you do it by yourself. And again, if you're doing this full time, maybe you're out there managing it, but that's not really my lifestyle. I can't really go out to Huntsville, Alabama or Texas every week. So, getting someone that's boots on the ground for you is really important. And I think on top of that too, is you'll have those boots on the ground being maybe your agent or your property manager that can check for you. So, hey, one time my agent goes checks there and she says it's good, then I trust her. Or maybe another time I send out my property manager to do little checks and balances, right? Mm-hmm. People that are not biased toward working with the contractor or the agent wanting to get the deal done. You have people checking and balancing that.
Some other quick tips, we haven't done it yet because we've set really good expectations with our contractors afterwards. We've gone through pitfalls where there's a contractor where he suddenly just stopped and ghosted us and weren't sure what happened, and we found out he got deported. So it was a bit tough to deal with that and trying to manage the renovation and find someone else to fill a place. But some other tools other people use is a Simply Safe camera. I think it's a company where you can just place it in the camera of the renovations, similar to like a Nest or a Ring, where it's installed by your agent or someone else, and then you can see when your contractors are going in and out and when they're doing the work. And they're always sending us like progress updates at the end of the day as well too. So I'll dive into my first property that I bought in South San Francisco. So I bought this in 2016, July. I was 23 years old, and it was a property where I just wanted to not pay rent anymore. I was paying actually only $800 a month in rent because I was renting a room, and I was master tenant and lowered my rent significantly. And there was a portion of time I was only paying $400 because I was renting out half of my room, half of the week to a friend as well too, since I was staying with Calvin some of the days. And then I bought this for $870,000, and we leveraged a home equity line of credit from my parents' house back in New York and put down for the down payment. So it was all bank money that we borrowed, and we didn't have any of our money in. So home equity line of credit is equity built from a different home to be able to put for down payment. So the loan I got was $470,000 and got a 3.625 interest rate. Right now, interest rates are significantly low, so it's a great time to invest. If you have like $250,000 down with certain banks, I've been able to help our clients lock in a 2.875% interest rate. So that is basically free money. If you're thinking about inflation is about 3%. So if you're getting a 2.875% interest rate, that's free money that you're getting. So our monthly payments with the HELOC and everything, with principal and interest and taxes, it was about $4,100, and I was renting out rooms at $3,750. So the monthly investment that I had out of pocket was $360. So it wasn't fully cash flowing, but I think what was important is I didn't have to pay for rental anymore and pay someone else's mortgage. And then also I was able, like, fast forward 4 years from now, I did a cash out refinance earlier this year, and it was valued at 1.24, and the equity gain was $370,000. So within 4 years, been able to build almost, I would say, 90 grand a month by just collecting rent is amazing. It's a great passive way to be able to build that equity. And was able to actually what I did was did a cash out refinance and pulled some money out as well too. And now I'm renting out all the rooms and getting about actually 5,000 plus now. So am cash flowing on this property. So it's over time that you will see the growth. And we actually have a property later on towards the end of this presentation that we have for sale that it's on Sunrise Way in San Francisco. It's a great property for house hacking and investment under $1 million. So we'll dive into that as well. So next.
Yeah, so we mentioned leverage before. Like, I think like real estate offers you the opportunity to actually use your leverage, right? Where again, like I mentioned before, like you can buy stocks, 100K stocks, and 100K stocks means you put in that 100K, but with real estate, I mean, 100K can get you 5 different homes that are all worth 100K. So 500K worth of homes. Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, like what Jenny had mentioned, right now, lending is rates are super, super low, and they will be here for the foreseeable future as long as we're in this. One of the really cool things that I've been telling people right now about leverage is that on a macro level, if you look at the economy where we had before COVID, I think we had, I don't know, 2-3 trillion of money in circulation. I think the government's already printed out 3 to 4 trillion in response to COVID-19. And what that means for the economy and real estate, for example, is that, you know, as you print out more money, the value of the dollar gets less and less. But with real estate, when you leverage and you get a loan and debt, you lock it in right there and then, right? So your mortgage, if you have a 100K property, you put 20K down, you have 80K of a mortgage loan. That 80K is not worth 80K in the same amount today as it will be tomorrow, right? That tomorrow rate is actually becoming less. So if you ask anyone that bought in like 1980, for example, their mortgage was $1,000, that was a lot for them. Nowadays, if you had a mortgage for $1,000 a month, you'd be like, wow, that is a really, really cheap mortgage. That's awesome. I can retire now. So think about that as we talk about money being printed, macroeconomics right now, and inflation that is almost guaranteed to happen here in the next few years. So,
yeah, and then one of the items that on this slide says the max debt to income ratio. George, I know you have a question. Why did you put almost 50% down payment? Would you have done a lower down payment in order to have more liquid that you can use towards your other investments? I think so. However, because of debt to income ratio at that time, the max debt to income, let's say if you're making $10,000 a month, the max debt you can have with all your credit cards, your car loans, your student loans, and your monthly mortgage payments and other things will be $4,500 to $5,000 a month. So with easy math, like if you have good credit score above 680, ideally 720, 740 plus, and about 20% down, you are, with today's interest rates around 3%, you can borrow about 5 times or a little more than 5 times what you make. So I was making around 100 grand. So times 5, I was only able to borrow about 500 grand. So that's a little less than that. So 470 grand. So that's the max I could borrow. So that's why I did put a lot down. And I think overall it depends on where your situation is and your income is at. And the max loans that you can have is 10 loans under your name with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And then you'll have to start looking at other types of creative financing after that. And then how to evaluate rental real estate. So we discussed a bit about how to purchase your own property, and we can dive into, if you're looking here locally in the Bay Area, Ashley and I are agents who would be willing to help. And Wilson, he's a great listing agent and he's been able to help with a lot of our sellers as well. And if we're looking out of state, so Jeff, I believe this was your question on how to analyze rental real estate. There's some questions about finding a good property manager. So what we learned from a lot of podcasts and audiobooks, as well as finding your core 4 team, your real estate agent, your contractors, property managers, lenders, mortgage brokers. So how we're looking on that is multiple tools from Google, Yelp, Zillow, looking at who are the top agents and asking for referrals too. So if you're looking for a real estate agent in a specific area, let us know and we will refer you to someone. And then ask them who are the great property managers out there, who are the great contractors, and then ask each of these people their recommendations for the other 3 people too. So then you can have a long list of people to choose from. We already discussed the 1% rule, and then things to look out for. So that was a cost. So inspection reports, making sure you do get an inspection. And some people were like, how do you know if this house even exists? Because you're hiring an inspector to actually go out and do an inspection. They will show all the pictures where the heating, ventilation, AC is, the roof, foundation, electrical, getting all this to see what maintenance needs to be done on the home. And looking out at all the solar homes. We love using other tools such as like Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com, and you're able to just filter out what are the sold homes in the area in the map and just look at the vicinity in the last 6 months, what things are selling for, and the growth in the location. So usually you might not know how to classify a B or C neighborhood, but some of the ways we've been doing it is going on Google Maps and walking or driving the neighborhood. If you're seeing a lot of boarded up homes, a lot of graffiti, or we've seen like little drug deals in Google Maps as well too. So those are some things that you might want to avoid. And other things are looking at schools. So if you're seeing a school ranking of like 1, 2, or 3, it might not be the best neighborhood. So aiming for like 4, 5, or 6 areas for schools. We don't want the best school district typically, like 9 or 10, because most of those are going to be homeowners and you're not going to get the best investment dollars on that. But there's other facets where people only believe in investing in good schools because they believe in the appreciation value there. And other things I already mentioned, the questionable characters, boarded up houses, and some other things are like, I bought a house with a really big tree in the back, and the roots of the tree like basically messed up the plumbing system, and I had to send a plumber out there every other month to figure out the plumbing situation. So I decided to sell that house and did a 1031 exchange on it. So those are other things. Ashley, anything that you've learned throughout your process?
I know I'll dive into some of them when we talk about my properties, but absolutely the core 4 is really important. I mirror what Jenny said. I did not find the best property managers at first. And so I've learned through that now I have reached out to the real estate agents that I can rely on in Indianapolis and ask them for referrals to property managers. I did fly to Indiana to find my contractor, and contractors, you're going to want to talk to 4 or 5, and staying on top of them is important. But I've had contractors come out and look at the property and then never send me a bid. So someone's going to tell you right off the bat whether or not they're going to perform. So just being mindful of those types of things as well. And with that said, I think I'm going to dive into my first one. So this is my first one that I purchased was in 2015 for $165,000. I did do conventional financing for this one. Turnkey property. The couple was going through a divorce, so they were very motivated. And it's currently valued at over 200, at 225. The current rent is $1,400. So this area is unique because it, as Jenny mentioned, it was really good schools. I didn't know really what I was doing at the time. We were just like, let's buy something. So this is before I had even met Jenny and went through the process of actually learning what it meant to be a landlord. I went to the property and I found the first tenant who walked in the door, and I let her move in. And during that time, I realized that you need to hire property managers to get qualified tenants, because we did have to go through an eviction process with that one. Another big lesson with that was that This is a business. I allowed this person to tug at my heartstrings, and then she wasn't paying rent for like 3 or 4 months. And so you have to remember that you went into this as a business, and you need to be a landlord. So sometimes it's best to pass it off to property managers. And so now I'm using a property manager recommended by a local agent. And so this is my first one and one of my favorites, but at some point I will likely do, similar to Jenny, a 1031 exchange, just because I feel like I've been able to build more equity in different homes in different areas of Indianapolis. So at some point I'll likely do a 1031 exchange, which is where I will take the sale of this and put it towards potentially at this price point, 2 single family homes to continue to build that wealth. And so the next one that I purchased was this single family, and we refer to it as a BRRR, which is buy, rehab, rent, repeat. And so for this one, we purchased in 2016 for $45,000, and we actually, half of the funds for this purchase was a private money lender. So my husband and I went in for half, and then this private money lender went in for the other half. We borrowed his money for 1 year and gave him 5% on that investment that he put into it. And then once we were ready to we purchased it with tenants in place. And so once they moved out, we knew that we were going to fix it up. So we actually borrowed money from another private money lender for the rehab, which was around $20,000. We fixed up the bathrooms and the flooring and the kitchen so that we could get a higher rent. And then we refinanced. And when that got appraised, it got appraised at 130. And so we paid back our private money lender from the purchase, plus what he had made from that for letting us borrow the money, essentially. And then the person who helped with the rehab, they got their money back within 3 months. And then we were able to take the rest of the funds to buy our next property. So my biggest lesson from this one was just realizing that you don't have to have all the funds to make an investment. There are ways that you can leverage other people's money because you have this asset that is tied to their funds. And so they were on title with us. So that's how you can leverage other people's money. And then that one now is renting for just over $1,000, like 800, I think. Yeah. And then I've got 2 more that I'll dive into. So with that, the leftover funds purchased this one in the Indianapolis Speedway area, which before COVID was a very popular area. And so we purchased this from another investor who brought it to us as he wanted to Airbnb the property, but he needed to pay back his private money lender that he had purchased the property with. So he needed the cash flow to pay off his private money lenders, but we let him stay. He rents from us for $1,000 per month. And this one is a townhome near the Speedway, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. He was making some pretty good income during especially the summer months. But it's also close to the airport, which is another thing when you're looking at investments. We recommend universities, close to airports, downtown areas where people are going to go for Airbnbs and rentals, close to transportation. And then the last one, and so this big lesson was networking with other investors. It was someone I knew actually through Facebook investments, and he said, I'm going to put this on the market, but if someone will buy it, if another investor is interested in purchasing it, we'll sell it to you for $15,000 less than what we're going to put it on the market if you'll allow us to Airbnb. So it was a nice little deal that we got there. And then the last one that I have here is a condo that was actually brought to me through a family friend. Anytime I went to Indiana, I would post photos of me just either, fixing up the one property on Dawson and just constantly adding to my social media about real estate and investments. So this person reached out to me on Instagram and said, hey, your friend mentioned that you're still buying properties. Like, is that true? And so we purchased this April, right in the middle of COVID, for $80,000. And the reason, one way that we were able to leverage this was that we asked as part of our contract that the tenant that was currently in place sign another year lease. And so they were already paying $1,200 per month. And so we had another year lease with these tenants. So that was a huge leverage point for us, that it was worth purchasing it, as Jenny said, over the 1% rule. So this one's already doing, and we have wonderful tenants that pay us a week before rents due. So I'm very happy with this property right now. I think this current value, there's a typo there. It's already like in the 100. It's already like at 110 or something. I think we had a typo there. That was the last property, was 66. But we've already built, within months, we've built already like 20K in equity, which is really exciting, even during these times.
Cash flow are you getting on these properties?
That's, a great question for my husband. He is the financial guy in all of this, and he does the taxes. But I'd say for the most part, total, we're right around, between all three properties, I think we're right around 1,500 in cash flow at this point. It differs because there is some maintenance. We did have, a little bit of the Airbnb hiccup. We want to be understanding of people's circumstances during COVID and those types of things. So he's obviously not getting tenants in there during Airbnb in Indianapolis right now. So we're reevaluating right now how we're going to handle that particular situation. Just given that a lot of people that are looking for Airbnbs right now are looking for extended stays. Just because of cleaning fees, you have to charge a lot because you can't just like turn them over. There's not a lot of travel right now. So we'll likely get a full-time tenant in that one.
So we'll dive into this one. Calvin will share his unique strategy of how he invested in this one. But Gary's question is, what are the loan requirements when living in property versus renting it? So if you're living in a property, there are great programs depending on your credit score and depending on the loan amount. So in the Bay Area, there's conventional loan limits of up to $765,600, I believe, for the loan. And you can do 5%, 10%, or 15%. So you don't need the full 20% down payment. There are certain programs in San Francisco and San Mateo County. If you work or live in these counties, then you could, so you have to work in these counties with a certain lender, a bank, a credit union, San Francisco Federal Credit Union. There's a 0% down program, but you need to have a 740 plus credit score. So those are great programs to get started. And we've had clients who bought with 0% down, $1 million home, put about 50,000 into it, and then it's now worth 1.3 within a year and a half, and refinance out to get a lower loan and use that money to be able to move up and buy their next property. And then for investment properties, if you're renting it, there are requirements of having 20% down. Unless you clarify it as a second home or a vacation home, you might be able to still be able to do 10% down. But for rental properties, most banks will require 20% down. And then once you exceed a certain amount with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you will have to require about 25 or even 30% down. And there's a lot of factors involved depending on what the purchase price is and where the property is and your credit score and your income. That will be factors that different lenders and brokers will be able to guide you to. Calvin can dive into his unique way of buying this house.
Yeah, so this is actually the oldest property I have today, and my first one in San Antonio. I love this place because it was probably the easiest property that I have, and the best sense I had. So just got it off literally just the old MLS. I think we were at a real estate convention at the time. Popped up on email. And we're like, hey, this looks like a good deal. We should buy it. Put an offer in sight unseen, just like at the conference. We were probably feeding off a lot of the energy there, but it ended up working out pretty well. I noticed that this was like 30K below every other property in the area. Did need a little bit of repairs. This is after we fixed it up a little bit, but got a quote, $7,500 in repairs. That was just cosmetic. It was essentially just roof, or not roof, floors, paints, cabinets, normal stuff. And this property as a whole, like, these are like 2019 audited numbers here, but just had really good tenants, right? My property management did a really good job screening the tenants on this one and like finding them. And they'd been there. They'd been there for I think like 2.5 years before this. They actually just left, so I'm a little bummed. But they were a tenant that just wanted their own privacy. They did every repair themselves. They weren't tenants that were like, hey, my toilet's clogged, can you come over? Or my light bulb's out, can you come fix it? Like they just took care of it, right? So I had no repairs. They paid their own utilities. My PITA was pretty low. Property manager was pretty low, and that was one of the best investments that I've had. And now it's worth probably like 170 now. And we have tenants there. I think the rent's like $1,550 now, but they're not as peaceful. I guess the lesson here is that if you find a really good tenant, try to stay and hold them for as long as you can, because they're few and far between for sure. So Georgie said, do you feel nervous offering on property sight unseen? What about roof, foundation, electrical, plumbing? Well, I didn't feel nervous about offering on it because you put condition, or you have an option period. In Texas, same as an inspection period here in California, but you have an option period there where you have about 10 to 12 days where you can do your inspections, you can back out of the deal and get your deposit back, all that stuff. So offering on deals, I never feel nervous about it. It's after that when there's no contingencies anymore. Then I'm like, all right, well, we're in this now. But you have those 12 days to make sure that you've done your due diligence, you make sure the numbers work, you talk to a bunch of property managers to verify, you talk to other property managers to verify your other property managers' numbers, you talk to agents, you talk to other agents, you talk to contractors. So, after that, like I felt comfortable that like this deal would work out just based on the numbers. And you obviously, when you project stuff, you want to be safe and over project so that, or I guess over project your expenses so that you can make sure that even if the worst case scenario happens, that you're still okay with the deal, and you have to be okay with that. Yeah, and I've actually still never seen this place inside. So, how do you find out of state investor friendly realtors? Well, I mean, you kind of talk to them about, hey, do you work with other investors? If they're like, no, I've never worked with other investors, they're probably not really real estate friendly or investor friendly realtors. So I always ask that. I ask them themselves, do you have any investment properties? Do you want to get into more investment properties? I've actually found that the ones that haven't had any investment property experience yet, but they want to break into it, are the most hungry ones that you can find, and they'll work their tails off to make sure that that they'll get you the right deal. Now, it's up to you ultimately to decide that that's the right deal or not. But for me, I want someone that's going to be basically me on the ground and be my trusted advisor. So that's why I like working with those like up and coming agents that are hungry, super hungry, and they want to get into it and leave and learn from you too. So it's a win-win situation.
And how we found those investors, like where we take classes that within our company and are in networks and Facebook groups of people around the country. So we will look at, for example, if you're looking in Bend, Oregon, we post on the group looking for a investor-friendly top agent or investor-friendly agent for out of area client looking to buy in Bend, Oregon. So then people will tag everyone they know, and you're going to be like, who's been tagged the most? And then refer over to those people, and likely they might have a team and have a good person to point you in the right direction and be hungry to work for you.
Yeah, here's another property I did. Similar to Ashley's BRRR. I had a single family BRRR here last year in San Antonio area. University is right next to San Antonio, but essentially bought this one off market. My agent go found me the other deal as well. Found me this deal, and the seller didn't want anyone to come into his house. He was very private, so you want to do an off market deal. He initially went 105K. But when we did an inspection, we figured out, hey, there were some things that, you know, would cost more on a repair side, but we were willing to take on if he was willing to drop the price. And he was, so we got down to 72 grand of a purchase price. And here's where I learned the real big lesson about having good contractors, because, you know, I interviewed, I don't know, like I flew down there, interviewed like 7 contractors, got all their bids, got all their scope of works, met them, shook their hands, looked them in the eye. And even though I did that, the one contractor I did hire ended up getting deported, which is the story. But the good news is I had good systems in place where I wasn't releasing funds unless he did work. So the damage was just a time of me having to now find my second pick and hiring him, and he actually did an amazing job. So overall with this one, and why I love BRRRRs in general, is that you can get all your money back out that you put in, and so own the asset and so cash flow, and then use that capital to invest in the next deal. And so this one, like, just to go over it, like 72K purchase price, about 30K or almost 30K of rehab costs into a total. So about 100K was my all in on this guy. The banks will give you about a 75% LTV. So they'll basically give you a loan on 75% of the value of the property. This one got appraised at 155,000. So 75% of that value of a loan is 116K. So basically I was all in for about 9,500K, got 116K back. So I made, 15K on the deal of cash right away. Plus I own the property, plus the cash flows. Plus I have my initial capital back that, eventually used on another property. So it's just a great way to keep your money moving and have velocity in the funds that you have. And now we're looking at deals that, instead of single family BRRRRs, doing commercial BRRRRs, which is the same concept, just with a little more commas in it.
And something that I learned throughout this process with this specific deal was to stay positive. I know we were freaking out of like our contractor got deported and all of that stuff, but looking at the brighter positive light and reshifting and reframing the story, because we had to extend the time frame to a little longer for the property to be finished, but due to time, the house appreciated more. So if we were reappraising and refinancing the property when it was initially going to be done, it would probably be around 120,000 versus 155,000. So it's also like the value of time, like the value of the property went up. So we're really grateful, and I know it was stressful, but overall things happen for a reason. And I think it was for a reason that our contractor got deported, and we learned that lesson, but it also helped us in the long run.
Well, that reason was he wasn't a citizen, so.
I think this was a duplicate slide. There we go.
So I'll dive into my first investment property out of state, which I already did a 1031 exchange on. So this was the first property I bought from a turnkey company, and bought it for $67,500 in 2017, and put in 20%, $17,500, and got a loan on the rest. And I was my monthly expenses with everything, with management and all that, was about $600 and something, and that I would say we'll get about $100 a month in cash flow. So fast forward about 3 years later. So I still held that. I had a lot of issues with this property as well too. That big tree in the back, a lot of the roots with the plumbing issues. And my first tenant was a recommended tenant from the person who sold it to me, and he was an electrician on the house, and he paid rent on time in the beginning and then started not paying rent because he knew I was like some little girl in California. So I decided to evict him and hire a actual property manager, because I was trying to save some costs and being cheap by not hiring a property manager. But I think that kicked me in the behind in the end. So then hiring a property manager, I got a great tenant in there, was there for a while. But then once they let me know that they're gonna move out, I decided to sell it. And actually I appreciated a good amount. I was willing to sell at a loss too, because I didn't want to deal with the plumbing issues. But once we listed it, we were able to sell it for $115,000. So the gain on that property was a good amount, and I was able to use the proceeds of my initial investment of the 17.5, and then also I paid down my mortgage a good amount because the tenant was paying down the mortgage. So I was able to get about $60,000 of proceeds after commissions and paying off the loan, and put in amount for a investment for a fourplex that we own in Kansas City now. So being able to increase our cash flow from $100 a month investment to a $600 a month investment is a big thing that we can do within real estate. So I know if you're looking at stocks, you might be able to sell and pay capital gains, except like you have to pay taxes on the gain and then buy other stocks. Versus here, you don't have to, all this is tax deferred gain. So deferred till you die is the term with 1031 exchanges. So this is my property. And then we bought these 12 units together in Kansas City, Missouri. How we found this one was from real estate investing groups. We would go to meetups. We used to host meetups, and actually met this nice couple, and they mentioned they had some properties and that fourplexes, and I was like, I'm gonna buy them from you. And I was just kidding. And then like fast forward like 2 years later, I was actually like, hey, we can actually afford this, we can buy it. And kept on asking them, saying, hey, we want to buy it from you. And they weren't actually planning on selling it, but after a few years they're like, okay, we're actually okay, like ready to sell it, because they wanted to upgrade and do exchanges to other investment properties. So you never know. And every property is for sale. I would say that it's just at the right time, at a right price too. So be persistent in asking. So we bought 3 fourplexes from our friends, and then Calvin will dive into the numbers for this.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest lesson I learned here was look out for your operating expenditures. As you get into bigger properties and unit-wise, like you'll have more expenses, such as like in this case, utilities aren't broken out because there's only 1 meter for water, for example. So it's all owner paid, which means you got to figure out ways to lower your expenses that way. And the reason for this one that I love is, it's a funny story because I've never been so excited about toilets in my life, but these guys had, the original owners had just old 1980s toilets that were really inefficient. I think the term for toilets, and I'm ashamed that I know this, but I do now, like every flush is like 3 gallons or something like that. Those are old toilets. Now they're like so efficient, they're like 1. Right, so 1 gallon of water per flush versus 3 is a big difference in your utility bill. So basically, just it's $100 per toilet. You could save, $100 a month on your utility bill. It's 1,000% worth it, right? So just watching that, tracking that, and now the big thing that we're doing on these right now that I actually just got appraisal on today on these properties was the other big expense that you're going to have is your debt. And because rates were, at the time we bought this, I mean, we had like a 5% rate, and now they're down to like 3.5%. So we would have saved like $600 a month just on the debt, and not going to cost them much at all. So, I would say when you buy a property, like again, make sure that you know what your operating expenditures are, because that's the one thing that you can't control. And then second is continue to watch it, because there's going to be opportunities for you to be able to continue to get that down as well. And the more you get that down, the more valuable your property is, because the more income that it's bringing in, and more investors are, if you sell to investors, they're looking for the income. So yeah, that's lesson 100 here. So George, for your question too, would I consider separating the meters for all the utilities on the Kansas City deal? Yeah, so I did look into it, right? So with this property, what you could do is you could separate, like you could separate the water meters, but it costs money. And this one, the meters were so far away from the city main that I got a quote on it. It was like 30 grand per quadplex. So we got a 90K investment just to change into separate meters. And I didn't think that was worth it. Now, what I'm doing right now with my property manager is we're starting to bill back tenants for water. So that's how we're getting that cost down now. But the 90K investment was too steep for what it could bring me in value-wise. So again, every deal is going to be different. If you find a deal that you do get a quote on that, you can separate the meters out and it's not that expensive and you gain a return that is reasonable for you, then absolutely I think it's worth it. But in this case, it wasn't.
So we'll dive into a live deal analysis of the next investment property. If you guys live in the Bay Area and are renting right now or want to just dive in, this is a property we actually have listed for sale, and it is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath. But what is unique about this property is actually a 2-unit single family home. So it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath upstairs, which you can probably rent for $3,600 to or even more, $3,600 to $4,000. So I rent out my house like furnished in the living space, and they just rent per room. So I'm able to charge about $1,200, $1,250 per room for there. So for this 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you can probably get about $3,600. And then the downstairs has another separate unit, separately metered at 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and you could probably get about $2,200 to $2,400. So if you're calculating that's going to be about $6,000 per month in rental income. And let's say here in the Bay Area, we are overquote. Homes do sell a little above list price. So I'm going to share my screen of how I calculate. So we go to our friendly friend Google, and we go on Zillow Mortgage Calculator. And then let's say we're buying this property at $1,050,000, for example, and putting 20% down. You can get a 2.875% interest rate right now as well too. We've been seeing that. Property taxes here are about 1.1%. So double check with your local area what that would be. Then $800 for insurance. So your monthly expenses will be about $4,514 for this home if you get it at $1,050,000. And if you're able to rent it out for $6,000 a month, that is a huge, great investment at about $1,500 per month. And other questions people might have is like, how much can I actually afford? So how much house can I afford? The affordability calculator. So let's say if you're making $100,000 a year, and if you have, let's say, just a car loan for at least $250, you have $200,000 for a down payment here, and that's an income. You can go up to 45, 50%, but we'll be conservative at 43%. Interest rates around 3%, 1.1 to 1.2% property tax. So what you can borrow and invest is about $787,000 for a property. So this is something that you can play around with. If you have double income, you can double this if you have a partner. So what you can afford is about a 1.3 million. So this is what you can afford on a debt perspective. So I love these tools just to play around with it. And why I love Zillow as a tool is you can see what homes are for sale and for rent as well too. So if you're looking at different areas let's say I was looking at areas for a friend, actually, Faye, I think she might be on this call, for investments for a condo in San Jose.
Honestly, yeah.
And then you can look at what rentals in the area too and figure out how much things are renting for in this area. And then other tools that I like to use is Facebook Marketplace. And then you can look in the specific area and how much homes are renting for. A lot of people have transitioned to Facebook Marketplace and Zumper.com for rental properties. So that's that. Okay. And then that's overall like the initial like deep dive into it, and would love to answer any additional questions that you guys have on the overall process. So we'll dive back into the slides. So how we can help you guys is being able to purchase locally so you can stop renting, refer you to an out-of-state agent area. And I know you asked, how do we find a great investor-friendly agent? So we'll be able to help you find that and provide meetups and masterminds for free education. We have a lot of webinars coming up. We hosted one on taxes, and we'll be hosting other ones on other topics as well too, on how to just be able to save money and be able to plan for long-term growth, and then also be able to be accountability partners for you guys, so that a lot of people go through analysis paralysis where they're looking through all these numbers and they're like, okay, I don't know what's going on. So I think it's just helping you, giving you that edge to do it and start, and then you'll be able to snowball effect from there to go from 0 to 23 plus units. And then if you guys want to either unmute yourself and ask questions, these are our cell phone numbers and email addresses that you can reach out to us directly. So I think there were some questions that we didn't answer initially. So let's see. Do you have suggestions, recommendations on how to keep your credit score above 700 while applying for multiple loans when growing your portfolio? So that's something where having multiple credit checks will affect your credit score. So it's talking to the lender as well too. They might be able to give you recommendations when they pull your credit report, what are the dings, and talking to the credit bureaus to make sure your credits stay up, and overall making sure you make your payments, putting the auto pays right away. There's actually one of the properties that we just bought that I transferred to the fourplex from the 1031, and I forgot to do auto pay on it. And luckily the bank with US Bank called me 5 days in. They're like, oh, make sure you make your payment. So like, thank God I didn't miss that. So if it's past 15 days, then they'll start giving you notice and start deducting your credit score. So making sure you're online, there's going to be a lot of numbers in place. So making sure you're on track of all your bills. Okay, and then other questions. So from George, are there not neighborhoods within 1 to 3 hour drive of you that meet the 1% rule? What is a draw to market so far, such as Alabama or Kansas City? What are some of the indicators of growth that you look at for, and how do you explore and do that research? So for us, there might be certain areas as well too, but I think we're probably not going to make that drive for the 3 hour drive. So might as well look at areas that are growing we know a lot of people are investing in, and other factors. We do live in California, which is a very litigious state. So being in a very litigious state that is also very tenant friendly is one other factors where we love owning our investment, like our primary homes, and building equity from here. But for cash flow, we thought it's not going to be that great because it's leading more towards tenants. Right now, like, people are not, like, if they don't pay rent, you can't chase after them. You can't kick them out. There's actually a moratorium in place in California where you're not allowed to kick out your tenants because of COVID. Versus in Texas, like or Kansas City, Alabama, they're more landlord-friendly states. So if they're not paying rent, then they can get the sheriff out there and kick them out for you.
As well as Indianapolis. We got our squatters out. I had squatters. They were legit squatters, but they're gone.
Yeah, in California, they'd own your property now.
I was gonna say, that's why I love Indianapolis. We got our squatters out.
I actually have a friend that owns, I mean, his family owns like almost 100 units out here in the Bay Area. And he said, I was playing poker with him the other day. He's like, his one tenant owes me 20 something grand, just that one tenant, because he hasn't paid anything and he can't do anything about it. So that was like, man, like I don't want that situation to happen ever. So that's another reason. And then your question about growth. Some of the things that you can look for is, I think, population growth and job growth. So job growth always leads to population growth, which, again, real estate's not rocket science. It's really supply and demand. If there's more demand for an area and there's not a lot of supply, guess what? Your rent's going up, your prices are going up, everything. I'm gonna look at the peninsula, right? Like, it's so hard to get a house here because they're not building more land here, right? So that's why, I mean, there's the same demand, less supply, and guess what? Prices are still going up. So that same concept relates to rents and out-of-state real estate as well.
And other tools that we're looking at is just searching. If you do a quick Google search on Forbes and Indianapolis, for example, then you will be able to see what the growth is and what the population growth, if there's job growth and all that. So just literally putting on Google Forbes and the city that you're looking at, and it tells a lot about the area.
Hi everyone, this is Zubin. Two quick questions. This is just an overall great presentation. Thank you very much. First of all, there's a lot of properties shown that are in this presentation that you all have bought outside of California, Texas, Alabama, Indiana, and then you mentioned they're landlord friendly. Was that a big prerogative that you all were looking at when you were looking to buy out of state, or how did you all determine which states you were going to buy out of? Maybe did you all come from those areas or know people there? That's one question. Last question. The second question here is, with COVID-19, I'm reading a lot of where like a lot of tech companies are allowing people to move to rural areas or other, outside of the metro areas. A lot of San Francisco and other metropolitan areas are shutting down a lot of buildings. Rents are going down because they don't need to come to the office. They're working from home. So are you looking at, do you think with COVID that's going to affect like movement towards more rural areas, or do you see people will eventually come back to the cities? What's kind of your idea on those trends?
I can answer for me. Indianapolis is actually where I am from. So
Okay,
I do have a large network there. And so that is how I got into Indianapolis. It's not to say that I haven't considered my next one will likely be in other areas of Indianapolis as well,
sure.
where IU is. That's where I went to school. But as well, I've considered Denver and Austin and Hawaii, just based on the investor network that I have and how successful I've seen people be in those areas. Cincinnati's another one that I'm looking into.
Cool.
And then I know Jenny will share.
So for Huntsville, when I bought that initially, it was like I was pretty much capped with my debt to income ratio at that time. And it was like all I could afford was a $1,000 property. I couldn't even get to 100,000. I was like, okay, what areas can I afford that has properties that are $60,000, $70,000? And I listened to a podcast and they said Huntsville has the highest highest IQ per capita. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. And NASA's out there. There's a lot of growth happening out there. So we're looking at reinvesting back in Huntsville, and we're under contract for a 16 unit out there in Decatur, right next to Huntsville. So that's one of the factors, seeing where there's constant, like, multitude of major industries. So you can't just rely on, for example, I think Chicago, my cousin invested in, but it's not a great industry, where it's actually declining growth. And I think they were focused a lot maybe around like the Detroit and Chicago area around cars and that industry, but they didn't have other significant industries. Versus in the Bay Area, we have healthcare, we have biotech, we have venture capitalism, we have technology. There's a lot here, and I love the Bay Area. I'm originally from New York, so I think there's definitely a sentiment of where some people are moving out, working from home, but they've been moving out more to like East Bay or Oakland or areas that it's been booming out there. San Francisco has been a bit dead at this moment, but I would say I do foresee once the CARES back, the vaccine is out, that people will go back and want to move back into these metropolitan areas. And for San Antonio, why we looked at that was we looked at the trends of what happened in 2008 and to 2012, and to see what the depreciation happened in all these cities. And we actually saw San Antonio was not one that was majorly hit. It was about 3% decrease in prices. So that indication, we feel like it was a very stable market. Not a lot of growth in appreciation, not a lot of decline in appreciation, but you will still be able to get that 1% rule or close to the 1% rule. And then Kansas City was like, because we had a friend who owned these properties and like, I want to buy your fourplexes, but it's become a good investment because there has been some growth there. We joke around like who wins like Super Bowls and championships and the World Series, you know, like the Royals and the Chiefs, they won stuff there, and San Francisco, we've won stuff. So it's like, oh, okay, like we're sports, they have good players in, they might have more growth in the area too. So I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but we try to think it is.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And then, sorry, what was your second question? Was more around like, where do you see the metropolitan areas, right?
Yeah, just with the onset of COVID, I mean, people keep saying this is a new normal. I think this is just normal. This is going to be long term. For that matter. So it's just changed culture all around. So where do you kind of see the real estate trends going in that regard?
Yeah, we definitely don't have a crystal ball of understanding where things will go up and down, but
sure.
You go into the mindset, this is not gonna be like a 2 to 3 year investment. It's gonna be more like a 5, 7, 10, 15 year investment. So like buying these properties to, like, I don't have kids yet, but these are going to pay for my future kids' college education. So once like paying off these loans, and then we'll be able to refinance, I'll pay for their college tuition. And then the monthly cash flow, that's going to be their textbook and their food money or living expense money that will help them and will give the control over them. So, and then eventually fast forward, once they're out of college, it's going to become our retirement plan, because for us, we know we cannot rely on Social Security. There's no more pensions for us at our age. So that's something where we are creating our own retirement plan from here. But great questions. Thanks so much, Zubin. Okay, let's see if there's any. Do we offer?
Hey guys, sorry. So you guys have talked a little bit about long-term rentals, Airbnb versus long-term tenants. Do you guys kind of have factors that you weigh when you consider one versus the other? Is it more of a personal preference thing? How do you make that decision?
Personally, for me, I would say long-term tenants. As far as rentals, I think Airbnb is really difficult to manage, especially depending on where you're at. It just kind of depends. It worked for me because I lived in the property that I was Airbnb-ing, and it was helping, take care of our monthly cost. So that made sense for us. And then the way we set up our other Airbnb was that our tenant was the person managing the Airbnb. And so that worked out a little bit, but now just given these times, I would recommend for now going with full-time tenants because of added costs that come around with Airbnb and potential vacancies.
Yeah, and then other things for Airbnb is you don't know the regulations in the cities as well too. For example, San Francisco, you need a permit to do Airbnb, and there might be always shifting regulations in each city where you might not be able to do so. I haven't personally done Airbnb, but I've shied away from it because I think my mindset is I want it rented. I don't care about it. Like I want to set it and kind of forget it, have the property manager deal with it versus like figuring out the turnover and getting bad reviews and such. So that's something where Airbnb is a great channel, but something that we haven't really dived into.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
And then some questions around what is your thoughts on renting to Section 8 type offer versus regular tenants. So half of our tenants in the Kansas City properties are actually Section 8, but they are retired veterans. They are so what we call is like housing for the social good, where they are going through tough times like PTSD and all these issues. And the Section 8 Housing Authority pays 90% of the rent. So it is guaranteed rental income versus like someone who might not be able to pay rent. So it really depends on, I would still say vet out the tenant and vet out their background a little more and then talk to the housing authority. I've heard some horror stories about some people with Section 8 tenants who basically burned down the house that they were renting, and then and this was in San Francisco, and then they were asking for money to be basically asked to leave. So there's a lot of stipulations in certain cities involved, so that's something you need to look into as well too. But we don't mind renting to Section 8 tenants. I think it depends on the area too. Okay, and then other questions. Henry Liu asked any updates with the current eviction laws, how to deal with a non-paying tenant in SF. Unfortunately, we are not lawyers, so we would not be able to give you advice on this. So this is a very sensitive topic during this time. So we do recommend you to talk to or an attorney who is specialized in eviction law. If you guys haven't put down your email, you can put it in the chat group. I posted my Instagram handle as well, so it has Ashley, so you can follow us. We're always posting different topics and such too. And then, let's see. We will provide the recording as well. And do we offer coaching or education for agents? So we are doing some one-off coaching with folks, and that's something that we can discuss more on a personal level. And we will be coming out with a platform in 2021 on more of a coaching educational platform, like on a regular basis. But all this is free for now.
Hey, this is David. I have a question. I'm a little bit lazy, I guess, frankly, when it comes to doing this. And beyond the research for investment areas, do you guys know any resources or companies that you would recommend for finding tenants, managing the upgrades, and handling all of sort of like those types of logistical issues, so that like you don't have to deal with them yourselves? I personally don't want to deal with evictions. It's just like I already have enough stress in my day job, and I like to be able to like abstract that away, but still be involved in this space.
Yeah,
so
that's something where you're probably looking more of a turnkey company style. So a Real Wealth Network is a platform. They have a podcast. I learned a lot from their presentations and podcasts. So they partner with these turnkey companies, I think, in different areas. It's still important to vet out the people that are working for these companies. But Memphis Invest is one. There's Narada Real Estate Investments. So just search the Real Wealth Network and they'll be able to connect you to a few different groups. And these are basically properties that have been remodeled, done, and ready to go for tenants, and they can even figure out the tenant placement. Roofstock is another one, roofstock.com, very similar, where you can look at the numbers, see what is available for sale, and some of them are already tenant occupied, so you don't have to find the tenants. And they have partnerships with property managers, so they'll deal with all that. You might not get as high of a cash-on-cash return, but it sounds like your time is very valuable to you in your day job, so it might be better. It's still better than leaving your money in the savings account at 0.01% or less. So just be able to transfer that into a turnkey property.
Yeah. And some of Roofstock, they guarantee like rent for 1 year. They have different options as well. If you check out Roofstock, and then Open Door is another option that's for turnkey.
And then we can probably refer you to tenant lawyers, but it depends on the situation. So just message me directly for that.
I was just wondering if, you know, since you guys host it so well with this, if you guys are offering services that you, well, based on your experience, you know, as a paid offering.
Any? Calvin?
For us, so we are creating a program that will be out probably next year. So we're working out through the kinks of it and really perfecting it in the next 3 months. So we'll have a paid offering, more of a coaching program session that will be offered in 2021. And other ways that is, it's like how we're here to just educate and provide resources at this time. And what would be very helpful is if you're able to share your experiences. We have Yelp and Zillow pages as well. So if you can review us about your positive experiences, I think that would be very helpful to spread the word. And we'll be happy to hop on a free consultation call with you guys at any time to dive into your goals. And also, we can refer you to other agents in different areas.
Awesome.
Joe, you'll be one of our first class students.
Awesome.
We'll stay around for another 7 minutes or so till 6:15. So yeah, just let us know if you guys have any additional questions or if there's a deal you want to run by us, and then we'll look at the property and then give you our feedback and thoughts too.
And I think it was Enrique who asked. I asked my husband, and we're cash flowing 2,600.
Yay.
He's the numbers guy.
I think Jay, you asked about partnerships, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so for partnerships, I think there's a lot that's involved. Like Calvin, we've been able to build some LLCs with different companies, but sometimes like if it's partnerships like within friends, I would say definitely have good contracts in place to say like who's doing what and what's the payout amount. What type of partnership would it be, like a fix and flip or just buying out of state investment?
It'd be it wouldn't be a flip. It would be like a BRRR, right? So actually, my first tenant, he's a venture capitalist. So he kind of just saw how I handled the situation, what I did within a short amount of time with the property that I had. He liked my demeanor. He liked how I interacted with him. He was a great tenant. COVID happened. He moved back to the Midwest. And then from there, we just kept in contact because he had a mattress that he couldn't get rid of, and I helped him out with it. And then that was that. You know, we ended his lease, and that was that. And then fast forward, he contacts me and he says, "Hey, you know, I know there was a lot of pressure with the COVID. I'm sorry I had to leave." And I told him no problem, but he was like, "I liked how you're cool, calm, and how you just handled everything. And how do you feel about doing a partnership?" And I said, "I'm open to doing partnerships, but I want to talk to you more on what your goals are and how they would align with mine, and how we can both benefit from the situation. What I bring to the table, what I offer, and what he'll bring to the table." So my initial thought on it would be like a 50-50. Me, no money in. He'll provide the finances. I'll kind of manage the deal, kind of help it go through, get the contractors, and then he's looking for property. So I was going to propose, find a property where he can hack. He can stay in one of the rooms, rent the other ones, and then, take it like, that route. Haven't thought too much of the exit strategy, other than refinancing, cashing out and splitting, or selling the property and doing the same thing. So, and yeah, I was thinking about, like, I don't know if I need an LLC, real estate, or like an attorney to make sure that we have all the specifics drawn out so there's no miscommunications.
Yeah, I would also say, yeah, I mean, I think you're doing the right thing of, figuring out, hey, where am I strong at? Where are my weaknesses? Where are you strong at? Where are your weaknesses at? Because at the end of the day, you want a partner that's going to complement your stuff that you don't like doing or don't know how to do, right? So same thing there. Even if it's like, you have time but no money, or you have money but no time, like that to me is a good partnership, because you're able to leverage that to get to the goals of both members. So I think you're doing well there, and I think at the end of the day, you're looking at the right things in terms of an attorney to make sure, and you're hashing out in the beginning and setting the right expectations to make sure that any situation that goes down, there's verbiage for that. Hey, that situation happens when you want to sell and I don't want to sell. Like, what happens in that situation, right? That way, if you ever get to that point, there's in writing agreed upon beforehand what you guys are going to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then someone had a question on 1031 exchange. How many times can we use it, and can it be used on investment properties, and how much percent down to expect on those? So for a 1031 exchange, you can use it. Basically, you can keep exchanging your properties after a while. I think there might be a certain time frame, like you have to locate a property within 45 days and close within 180 days, and it has to be an investment property actually, and it has to be a like-kind investment property. So you could trade from a single family or condo to a duplex or a 16 unit. It just has to be real estate to real estate. You can't trade it to something else like gold or Bitcoin. And for the down payment, you have to buy something that is worth more than what you sold your initial property for. So if you sell your $1 million property here in San Francisco, you can actually buy 5 $200,000 properties out of area. So those are some of the thought process, and Calvin can dive in.
Yeah, so there's really like 3 main rules right now with 1031 exchanges. Of course, Jenny had mentioned, hey, 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. But when you're looking for, let's say you sell a single family home and you're trying to buy a package of deals, right? So maybe it's four plexes or 4 duplexes, whatever it is, right? There are rules around that. So one is there's a 3 property rule where you can identify, up to 3 different properties without having that have anything to do with like the fair market value of those properties, meaning that it could be whatever price it is, doesn't have to be 200% worth of the property or 95%, or there's another thing called the 95% rule. So 3 property rule, that's one rule. The second rule is a 200% rule. So if you identify more than 3 properties, then the amount of the relinquished property is, so let's say you sell a property for 100K, then it can't exceed 200% of that worth of the relinquished property. So that's if you identify more than 3 properties in your 1031 exchange sheet. And then the third one is if you do identify more than 3 properties, then there's another thing called a 95% rule. If it is more than 200% worth of whatever you sold your original 1031 exchange property, the 95% rule means that you'll basically have to, whatever you identify on your 45 days that you're looking to identify to exchange your 1031 money into, that means you basically have to close on every deal that you put on that line item, or else you don't get the tax benefits of 1031 exchange. So those are just things to watch out for as you go through a 1031 exchange. Besides that, though, I think it's an amazing tool, and it's a great way to defer to die.
Yeah. And if you guys didn't read the chat, and great question, Henry. We posted our previous webinar that we hosted on refinancing and taxes. So it dives into the 1031 exchange. And we also want to preface, we are not tax accountants. So we apologize if there's any misinformation, but that's something where definitely ask your tax and CPA advisor on. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry, I was on mute.
Thanks.
I had a question though, just about what you guys' goals are And this is a little bit of a selfish question because I find myself thinking, like, all right, we're like late 20s, early 30s. We still got a whole long road ahead. And I think like investment strategies change depending on what phase in your life you're at, so I'm always kind of wondering between, when it comes to like real estate investing, how do you think about when your strategy changes? Are you investing more in appreciating assets right now because you have the runway for the appreciation? Are you focusing on cash flow right now because you just want to, retire from your corporate job, Calvin, and, have that passive income? Like, is there a break point where you're doing more appreciating stuff right now for going cash flow and then selling all of that at one point and buying only cash flow heavy? Just like, how do you guys think about the next 20 or 30 or 40 years?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. And I gotta tell you, man, like, I feel like my investment strategy has changed like year over year, right? Like when I first started in this, it was like, all right, let's just get our feet wet. Like, let's go both cash flow and appreciation. Then it was like, okay, well, we're young, like we have a lot of runway, let's go a lot of appreciation. Now it's like, okay, well, what can we do to do both and do it more, right? So right now, like for example, for us, the goal right now, short term is 10K a month. And then I think at the future after that, 20K a month. We're looking at just the money velocity, right? So those commercial BRRRRs, or you can do the same deals. And like, I think we showed on the slides that, in a single family home, you can BRRRR it out, get all your capital out, use that same money again. But, your cash flow is like $100, right? It's great because, you don't have any money in the deal of your original stuff, but, at the end of the day, like it's only $100 of cash flow, right? It's not really moving the needle. So that's why we're looking at these commercial BRRRRs, because at the end of the day, these properties, like we can do the same thing. It's a little bit more capital intensive at first, but once we refinance out, it's like $3,000 of passive income a month, right? For the same amount of work in the same amount of time. And then doing that same thing over and over and re-injecting that capital. So right now, that's kind of the goal is doing that. And the cool part about that, and my strategy right now is more on the commercial side, is that you can force that appreciation just based on just the income that you can get, right? So that can do two things for you. One is you can get the cash flow, you can leave it in there if you want to, just cash flow, or you can refinance for it, still cash flow a good amount. But you've increased the property value and you control that property value, which I like a lot more versus residential. Sometimes it's based off what's happening in the comps in the area. So I guess to answer your question long-winded, I think, the strategy's changed a little bit just to try to go a little bit bigger. Whereas in the beginning, we didn't really want to because you just didn't feel comfortable enough, right? You're still trying to learn, like getting your lumps in. And I'm always a big fan of, I like people who have gone through it and made mistakes, because you're like, all right, cool. Like you've actually tried to do it and you've learned from that, versus someone that's never been clean cut the whole time. Like there's always red flags about that for sure. So, I think just continuing to do it and scaling up and getting bigger properties, and to a point where we're good to go. We're at our number.
And I think also it's like who you surround yourself with. So Calvin's in a great group called Go Abundance, and there are a bunch of real estate investors who need to be accredited, and they meet 2 to 3 times a week to just talk about goals in different ways and different deals. So that's something where it's really important. Like if you're surrounding yourself with people who are doing this on like a larger scale, we're like, oh shit, we need to like catch up too.
Nice. Cool. That's why I joined these, so I can be surrounded by you guys.
Yeah.
Realize I need to catch up.
You're doing really well, so there's just a few more.
Yeah.
Come over
Thanks.
for any time. We have a backyard patio now, so. Hey Yuki, any additional questions from you?
No, the presentation was amazing. I really liked it. I think I'd love to get like a consultation, because I think I have like some personal stuff that I'd like to go over with you in terms of like goals, and figure out like what we can do in terms of like investing out of state with my partner, Don.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll schedule a time with you afterwards.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone.
Okay. So if there's no additional questions, we'll wrap it up, and Jeff will schedule another time to have dinner. Ashley will come over.
Yes, you guys are welcome anytime. Please come over.
I just want to jump in the pool.
Yeah, we've invited some friends and family over just to jump in the pool over Labor Day weekend because of how hot it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just stand outside and watch them, so we're safe.
There you go. Still
Yeah.
socially distancing.
Exactly.
Very good.
Well, thank you guys. I always learn little nuggets of great information every time I join these.
Thanks for all your referrals, Jeff, and
Of course.
all your friends.
Yes.